Cyberfascism would be something like the merger of the state and social media power. And before we start this segment, I just want to suggest that perhaps you would want to follow us on alternative media, such as on Getter, where you can follow Lotus_com, or you can follow my own Getter account, which is just at Carl Benjamin, because it looks like things are going very strangely in the realm of social media, and it seems that we're arriving with enough information to say that we have arrived at some sort of form of cyberfascism. I find it hard to define it as anything else. There are many different threads that lead me to this conclusion, so let's just begin with the first one, which is this thread by one Patrick McGee about the complaint that was filed with the Texas Attorney General, filed in December of last year, that has been released, and people have been going through it. Now, I haven't had time to go through it myself, so I'm going to be taking these people at their word, but I think that what they have put is likely to be in it. So we're just going to go through some of the things that have been revealed about the collusion between Google and Facebook. They say, online advertising is enormous. Google's exchange processes 11 billion online ad spaces a day. So this is a massive, massive market, and it's a virtual monopoly. Google controls almost all of it. More daily transactions are made on Google's ad network than on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ combined. They also own the largest buy-side and sell-side brokers. Quote, "It is pitcher, batter, and umpire all at the same time," says the complaint. One senior Google employee says, the analogy would be if Goldman or Citibank owned the New York Stock Exchange. And more to the point, if the New York Stock Exchange was the only stock exchange. So this is just giving us an impression of the monopolistic power of Google.
They just control everything by the sounds of it. Those terms that they're using are not uncertain whatsoever. They're in control.
But without a doubt. And Google started a dynamic allocation, ostensibly to maximize revenue for publishers. In reality, it was to snatch publishers' best inventory at the expense of the publishers' best interests. To respond, competitors came up with header bidding. Publishers could route ad inventory to multiple exchanges to solicit the highest bid. By 2016, this was adopted by 70% of major US online publishers. And so publicly, Google said, well, this isn't a threat to us at all, but privately they said, this is an existential threat. So Google's response to this was to secretly make its own exchange win, even when another exchange submitted a higher bid. And this program's name was Jedi. So in their
by day, I'm ashamed of being a Star Wars fan when you hear about stuff like this.
It's not your fault. They're the ones doing this. Google's own words are, Jedi program generates suboptimal yields for publishers and serious risks of negative media coverage if exposed externally. So if the public were to find out that Google is a monopolistic entity over a giant market and is rigging that market in its own favour, well, that's going to be serious risk of negative media coverage, as one might expect.
I don't think many people are going to be too happy with that situation.
No, I mean, it's illegal for a start, but it's also deeply unethical, and Google don't seem to care. And then in comes Facebook. So in March 2017, Facebook threw its weight behind the header bidding, which was a big threat. Quote, Facebook communications reveal that Facebook executives fully understood why Google wanted to cut a deal with them. They want this deal to kill header bidding. Google doesn't want to compete with Facebook. It says it would rather build a moat by collaborating instead. Facebook anticipated this in an 18-month bidding strategy, says new unredacted details. Facebook and Google allegedly agreed on quotas for how often Facebook would win publishers' auctions, literally manipulating the auction with minimum spends and quotas for how often Facebook would bid and win. Google employees discussed a Jedi mind trick on the industry to cut off exchanges in header bidding. Now, Google monopolizes the publisher ad server market for display inventory through its own product called Google Ad Manager. And Google Ad Manager controls 90% of this product market in the United States. So Google and Facebook are currently operating a monopoly with a particular deal that means they're both insider trading, essentially. And this is unsurprisingly quite scary, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's living up to the title of cartel.
Well, yes.
To me.
It's absolutely a cartel, with a ridiculous amount of money, a ridiculous amount of market dominance. and shows that there is something deeply wrong in Silicon Valley. So one Google employee conceded, an exchange shouldn't be an immensely profitable business. It should be a public good used to facilitate buyers and sellers. Because the people who lose out on this are the regular people who are like, well, I'll just use Google adverts to try and promote my product. Well, Google are like, well, we're going to take something like 32% of your profits out of this, when a regular ad exchange is something like 15%. And Google can't even be attacked on this because they are the market. So there's nothing you can do about it.
They set the rules.
Exactly. Google has insulated its exchange from any of the competitive market dynamics that would otherwise incentivize them to lower the prices. In fact, here we go. GDN charges high double-digit commissions of at least 32% on advertising transactions, whereas according to public sources, this is double the standard rate elsewhere in the industry, if they were the remaining 10% of the industry.
Yeah.
And so how mad is that?
I mean, they're not really giving people many options, are they?
No. Going on to another Twitter thread, talking about Google's internal rules, says Google has a secret deal with Facebook called Jedi Blue, which they knew was so illegal that they have a whole section describing how they'll cover for each other if anyone finds out. So they literally, they are literally a cartel.
So they know exactly what they're doing is wrong.
Absolutely.
And they have contingency plans in place. Wow.
Facebook and Google are conspiring to protect one another in the event that this becomes public knowledge.
And we trust these people with the exchange of information.
Oh, completely. Google has worked with Facebook and Microsoft to discourage them from increasing user privacy, lamenting occasions where they prioritize their reputation over the collective business interest. Again, data is money to them, and they control it all. Google appears to have a team called G-Trade, which is wholly dedicated to ad market manipulation. Google had a plan called Project Nera to turn the web into a walled garden they called not owned but operated, as in Google is the thing that runs the internet. Facebook and Microsoft are aware of this, which is why Facebook is in a direct cartel with them. Google is willing to do almost anything to prevent people from circumventing their ad exchanges. This is what AMP is about. Google habitually insider trades on their ad exchanges in every way you can think of and every way you can't. Too many ways to list here. The exchanges are also rigged so Google wins the ad bids when they aren't the highest bidder. A large amount of people inside Google are aware of all of this. If Google ever tells you that some change will increase your ad yield, run. In fact, everything they tell you is a lie. How very interesting. So moving on to Facebook's internal leaks, which the Wall Street Journal have been banging on about for the past couple of weeks. Facebook is riddled with intersectionality, woke nonsense. The company is basically run that way. And they have here information about an internal racial justice chat board, just so you can get a feel. I remember people at Google, when Donald Trump won in 2016, literally, they had a big meeting, and people at Google, the top executives, one of them cried on stage, right? Just to show you that, I mean, these are Californians through and through. Right?
Weak people, by the sounds of it.
Radically left-wing weak people.
Yes.
But anyway, so in June 2020, after the George Floyd protests, there was a Get Breitbart Out of the News tab, because, of course, they are well aware that Facebook is full of boomers, and because it's full of boomers, they tend to be more conservative than they are left-wing. And this means that conservative news outlets do remarkably well on Facebook, again, why you should follow us, while you still can, and they are furious about this. The employees said that Breitbart was emblematic of a concerted effort at Breitbart and similar hyperpartisan sources, none of which belong in the news tab, to paint black Americans and black-led movements in a negative way. Okay.
It's not like any other social media has a tendency to promote certain hyper-partisan news outlets, is it? That
would represent black Americans and black-led movements in a very positive way.
Yes.
You know, as if balance is off the table here. And this is just something that a bunch of Facebook employees chimed in to agree on. In the same chat, a company researcher said that any steps aimed at removing Breitbart could face roadblocks internally because of the potential political blowback. At best, it would be a very difficult policy decision. So it's not that they don't want to, it's just they're like, well, publicly this is going to look bad. In the same way that Google was like, if any of this gets out publicly, it's going to look bad. We're going to try and do it anyway.
Yeah, ideologically, they're all for it. It's just the optics of it.
Exactly. Many Republicans say that Facebook discriminates against conservatives, which would be shocking if it didn't. I mean, look at the internal bias of the people running it.
I'd be surprised if any of the Silicon Valley giants were found to not be discriminating against conservative viewpoints.
If they want to talk about unconscious bias, well, I mean, they've got very conscious biases. The documents reviewed by the journal didn't render a verdict on whether biases influenced its overall decisions. They do show that employees and their bosses have hotly debated whether and how to restrain right-wing publishers, with the most senior employees often providing a check on agitation from the rank and file. The documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal, which don't capture all of the employee messaging, didn't mention equivalent debates over left-wing publications.
Oh, surprise, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, they continue with right-wing sites are consistently among the best publishing performers on the site. According to research data, this was one of the reasons why Facebook was criticised by people on the left who say their algorithms reward far-right content. I mean, they reward popular content, and if right-wing content is popular on Facebook because Facebook is populated by boomers, what are you surprised about? In 2016, Facebook took steps to damp the spread of what it deemed as misinformation. This included a tool called sparing sharing, which targeted hyperposters, or accounts that post very frequently. It reduced the reach of their posts since data had shown these users disproportionately shared false and incendiary information. Another tool called informed engagement reduced the reach of posts that people were likely to share if they hadn't read them. So basically, Facebook is actively engineering what people can see on their platform. In 2019, Facebook data scientists studied the impact of two tools on dozens of publishers based on their ideologies. The study, dubbed a political ideology analysis, suggested the company had been suppressing the traffic of major far-right publishers. Again, far-right being conservative, even though it wasn't its intent according to the documents. Very conservative sites, it found, would benefit most if the tools were removed, with Breitbart's traffic increasing an estimated 20%, the Washington Times 18%, Western Journal's 16%, I love the idea that the Western Journal's right-wing, and Epoch Times by 11%, according to the documents. And so we move into the latest whistleblower attack on Facebook. Again, you can see how this is coming from the left-wing establishment against a massive organization like Facebook, because Facebook is platforming right-wingers even while they are throttling them.
And from establishment media, this whistleblower has had absolutely no pushbash. Everything
Verified
that she has said,
checkmark now.
Yep, everything she has said has been welcomed with open arms and no critical thought or any just pushback at all.
Because she's working exactly within the institutional logic of the left-wing establishment, and she's trying to get right-wing competition deplatformed.
Yeah,
that's what she's going for.
She's just parroting their own phrases back at them.
Exactly. Anyway, so Frances Haugen, I don't know how it's pronounced. Haugen, sounds more likely, is preparing to give evidence to politicians, members of parliament at Westminster, and she is accusing Zuckerberg of not being willing to protect public safety. And this basically, it's more of her complaining that Facebook isn't censoring right-wingers. This has fueled renewed concerns about Facebook's role in the January 6th Capitol riots, in which a mob seeking to overturn the election results stormed Congress, which is actually a more reasonable description than it could have been. But Facebook is now finally getting the comeuppance that Parler got, even though the January 6th Capitol riots were not organised on Parler. But this has finally come for Facebook, where it was actually organised, if you could consider it to be organised.
I mean, ever since it happened, that has just been a convenient battering rod for people on the left wing to just smack anybody they don't like over. If you enable free discussion between people, you must have had something to do with the riots then.
You see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, so moving on, the Conservatives, to whom she's going to be giving her beware of Facebook speeches, are all for censorship. They demand it, in fact. The social media giants have been warned they'll face new curbs if they don't adopt a no-tolerance approach to online abuse, because people are insulting members of parliament online, and therefore social media should do something about it. They, of course, want to abolish the idea of online anonymity, but they want to go further. Furious Tory MPs have ordered them to enforce compulsory ID for opening accounts and lifetime bans for repeated hate speech. So it's not enough that in this country, that's a crime. In America, that's not a crime, and therefore the Conservative MPs want to force a foreign company to ban you for something that's not illegal in the country Facebook is located in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And hate speech is
Conservatives.
Yes, and hate speech is such a nebulous term in the first place.
It's a left-wing term.
Well, yeah, it's nice and easy and flexible.
Yeah,
very
it means
subjective.
whatever you want it to mean, and it's invented by the left, and the Conservatives have adopted this and championed it as their own. Why not? Anyway, so they've spoken out amid growing pressure for a crackdown on online hate following the murder of Sir David Armes, which had nothing to do with online hate.
Who's pushing that pressure?
The Conservatives are. They want this, because that's the world we're moving into. MPs highlighted the abhorrent racist abuse of England footballers after Euro 2020 and threats targeted at women. Conservative MPs, ostensibly, who seem very much like Labour MPs, don't they?
And even if it wasn't anything to do with that, all of the abhorrent racist abuse that they received, didn't that all come from mainly like Italy and France?
It came from foreign countries, that's correct.
Yes.
But they're calling for a 3 strikes and you're out policy and a widening of what's considered racist, why not?
Yep.
To include slurs like monkey emojis. So they want monkey emojis essentially banned from the internet because people in Italy posted them against England footballers.
This just feels so scattershot, like they're just throwing anything and everything they can.
They absolutely are. But again, the connection between Google, Facebook, and the British government goes deeper. According to The Times, MPs are concerned about civil service leaks on Facebook. We can get to the next one, John. The government's plan to regulate social media is being leaked by civil servants to former colleagues who work at Facebook. Because it turns out there's something of a revolving door between the civil service and Facebook employment.
Oh.
I didn't know this.
Neither did I.
No. There is concern in government over a lack of oversight of officials who have quit Whitehall to join big tech firms. Now, one wonders how much the big tech firms are doing to poach these people, as in, come and work for us instead. You know, you know people on the inside, we'll give you a nice fat paycheck and a nice easy job, and you can just be part of the sort of mechanism that we use to interface with the government. I can't prove that, of course, I'm just speculating. But anyway, a senior Facebook representative had said in a meeting and raised an issue about online harms that only a few officials knew about, according to a senior government source. So basically, we know they're talking to one another because how did the people at Facebook get this information? This is supposed to have been inside the government, and suddenly, Facebook representatives saying, yeah, but what about that thing you haven't told anyone yet? How do you know? Well, I mean, we do employ a bunch of your civil servants, you know, and they obviously have spoken. For example, Farzana Dudhwala, who worked at the Office for Artificial Intelligence within DCMS and then at the government Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation, joined Facebook in January to work on AI policy and governance. We have examples of these people doing it. Julian Knight, Tory chairman of the DCMS Select Committee, said any perceived coziness between the likes of Facebook and civil servants has the potential to undermine the new online harms bill and regulatory regime. Well, I mean, good, but like the concern for me is that the boundaries between our government, between Facebook, and between, like, you know, the civil service are all becoming very blurred.
Yeah.
These people are just going from one to another. I mean, at the moment, Nick Clegg is the chief operating officer for Facebook.
Really?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Didn't you know that?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
He's the guy who's regulating Facebook in the UK.
Okay.
Nick Clegg, ex-leader of the Liberal Democrats, deputy prime minister from like 2010 till 2014 or 15 or whatever it was.
All I'll say is that's a very convenient position to be in.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Facebook's like, oh, yeah, we'd just love to have you on board.
Yeah.
Just love it. I mean, like this is very concerning.
And especially if they do have ex or current politicians in them. I imagine it gives them a sense of prestige to a certain extent.
Not just that, it connects them to the political establishment directly. You know, these people have all got personal connections of their own to various other people around, the civil servants throughout the civil service in Facebook. So you can see like a sort of meshing together of these two entities. But anyway, they carry on. Frankly, it isn't too important to have anything done other than by the book. I trust ministers will take this seriously. Damien Collins, the Tory MP who chairs the Online Safety Bill Committee, said, the UK will lead the world in creating a comprehensive regime for online safety. There is nothing that Facebook can do to stop the government and Parliament from creating a regulatory regime to make the social media safer, which is why you should follow us on alternative social media, because these people are mad and they are going to try and take over the entire internet.
That sounds positively dystopian right there. We have a comprehensive regime to keep you safe.
We have a totalitarian plan for the internet. That's what they're saying. Sue Hawley, the executive director of Spotlight on Corruption, said these are very serious allegations which suggest that big tech are getting privileged access to civil servants and information off the back of the revolving door, and they need a full investigation. The revolving door regulator, ACOBA, needs far greater powers, an expanded remit, and more resources if it's going to prevent this kind of thing from happening. Well, who's going to be employed in that? How do we know that it won't be civil servants and ex-Facebook employees employed in ACOBA? None of this can be marked off as being a safe, independent body that will regulate the other two. Absolutely not. This is unbelievable. Anyway, so moving on, it turns out that billionaire investors such as George Soros and Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, are going to launch something called Good Information Inc., which will be a new group to police the internet and tackle the disinformation crisis.
Oh, good.
Yeah, this was announced earlier today, and I haven't got any further information on it, unfortunately, but what do you think this is going to mean? This is going to mean that international billionaires are going to be working with our new tyrannical totalitarian governments that have deep connections to Facebook and Google and will be controlling all of the information available on social media. Again, follow us on alternative social media platforms, folks. Right? And if you think for a second that the media is somehow not going to be complicit in this, you're an idiot. Why did you think that, right? Breitbart, just before the podcast went live, I saw this by Breitbart, and just to show what they say, the media is cooperating in how to release these kind of whistleblower publications. Again, the person on the inside with full support from the media, because she is part of the media's attack on Facebook's right-wing information ecosphere, right? They say several establishment media outlets coordinated the release of of document disclosures in giant and secret, now defunct online chat groups hidden from the public, a series of recent reports reveals. The group shut down abruptly on Tuesday afternoon after a series of unanswered inquiries from Breitbart News were sent to known members throughout the establishment media, including at least 2 New York Times reporters, a senior editor at The Atlantic, and an NBC News reporter, and several others. Because, of course, journalists move from publication to publication to publication, creating a nice network and class of journalists who are, again, all in complete contact with each other, except for those people at Breitbart, for example, whom they want removed from Facebook's news tab altogether. This is all coming into focus, is it not? The online chat was done through Slack, an application that facilitates group chats and is used by many different newsrooms and other companies nationwide, help establishment media outlets coordinate the release of their stories on documents provided to them by the so-called Facebook whistleblower Frances Haugen. Probably pronouncing that wrong again. Slack is generally used for internal, easier communication of remote companies, but special features do allow them to set up the groups with external members. It's unclear who created the group, but its full membership list is of yet now unknown. But 2 different press reports, one from an outlet called The Information and another from a reported column from New York Times, Ben Smith, publicly revealed the existence of the group and the nature of its purpose, as well as some of its members. Most known members did not respond to Breitbart News requests for interviews, which were sent earlier on Tuesday, but after the first round of inquiries went out seeking information about the Slack group and whether its members, in the interest of transparency, would support a public release of its full contents. A third report, this one from tech blog Gizmodo, revealed that the group would be shutting down permanently. Smith himself has not replied or anything like that and is downplaying these revelations. So you can see the media is coordinating, Silicon Valley is coordinating, and they're all somehow connected and meshed in with our own governments. This is what a cyber-fascist regime is going to look like in the future. Follow us on alternative media.
If you enjoyed that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can watch the full thing at 1 p.m. every weekday at lotuseaters.com, or you can sign up to get access to all the premium content we have on the site.
Yeah, we've got loads of really good stuff. Every week we have a Contemplations and Epochs episode that goes up, and in the Contemplations we talk about just interesting things, and the Epochs episodes are probably my favourite because I love talking about history. This latest one is we're doing a bit of a series on the 100 Years' War and why England kept winning. And we've not finished it yet, and you're going to really enjoy the end of that one. But we've also got other excellent episodes that we do, like the book club. The most recent one was Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. This was about his time in Burma as a colonial officer, and when he was tasked with the shooting of a rampaging elephant. And it's really, really interesting what the circumstance of the thing was. But we also have lots of other content, such as premium articles, which have audio tracks on them for our silver and gold subscribers. And we do premium podcasts about things that we don't really feel that we can put on YouTube or have done a particularly large amount of research into. And so it's worth keeping them slightly more private. And we also do lots of very interesting interviews, such as this one with comedian Steve Hughes, which was really fascinating because I didn't expect him to be a philosopher. But anyway.
Yeah. Also, the last thing to mention is the live event content we have. So we occasionally, when we get around to it, doing our live events, and the videos from them are on the website as premium, of course, because people came to see and paid. So go and check that out. This is on the worst of critical race theory.
Yes.
And I do mean the worst.
It's unconscionable.
Yeah. So if you'd like access to all that premium content, go to lotuseaters.com and subscribe. Thank you and goodbye.